He had started to go a little off the deep end. Over the past few days, he had called the house multiple times, threatening my aunt. Still, nothing had ever really come of it. We had dealt with his temper and sudden flare-ups throughout their entire relationship, so this behavior wasn't exactly new. The only difference this time was that we were hearing him lose control over the phone, not face-to-face. In a strange way, that almost felt like a relief compared to the usual routine of trying to avoid confrontation with a middle-aged man who carried a constant bad attitude. At the time, my parents and I had just immigrated to Canada, which is where this story takes place. Our own house wasn't ready yet, so we were staying at my aunt's place for the night. It was the holiday season, and we were simply enjoying some quiet family time. There was hot cocoa, caramel, popcorn, everything that made the evening feel warm and safe. That feeling shattered in an instant. My aunt was sitting in the den when she glanced up and saw her ex walking toward the house, holding a hunting rifle. She screamed for my dad. Without hesitation, he sprang into action. He locked the door, rushed my aunt, my mother, and me upstairs, and secured us inside a bedroom. We pushed a dresser in front of the door while my dad grabbed a knife and headed back downstairs. I remember standing there in shock, watching him move calmly toward danger. There was no panic in him, only focus. In those few seconds, I learned something important about my father. This was not a man to ever underestimate. What happened next, I only know because it was later told to me. My mom called the police from the upstairs phone. Meanwhile, my aunt's ex forced his way into the house. My dad waited until he stepped inside, then confronted him. The struggle that followed was chaotic and loud, but the weapon was knocked away. By the time the police arrived, the situation was finally under control. The most terrifying discovery came afterward. During a sweep of the property, police found the ex's father hiding in the backyard, armed and waiting. He was known for his violent past and had clearly planned for someone to run outside. Had my father made a different decision, the outcome could have been far worse. Both men were arrested. One was deported, the other sent to jail, followed by a long-term restraining order. They later claimed they only wanted to scare us, but the truth was clear. That night could have ended in tragedy. Because of my father's courage and quick thinking, it didn't. And because of that, we've been able to enjoy many more Christmases together. On December 25, 2014, in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, 36-year-old Dustin Lee Klopp dialed 911. He told the dispatcher that there had been a domestic disturbance at his home and that he needed police assistance. When asked for more details, he refused to elaborate. Once he was told officers were on the way, he hung up. When police arrived, there was no response at the front door. Domestic disturbance calls are often loud and chaotic, but this house was eerily silent. Officers circled the property, checking windows, and eventually moving toward the backyard. Everything seemed abandoned. As they passed a small shed, one officer noticed a disturbing odor coming from inside. After forcing the door open, they made a discovery that immediately changed the situation. Inside was the body of Stephanie Kill Hefner, Dustin's common-law wife. It quickly became clear that Dustin was gone, and so were the couple's 2 daughters. Police rushed to set up roadblocks across the county, fearing the worst. But before the search could escalate further, Dustin walked into a state police barracks and turned himself in. "My name is Dustin Lee Klopp," he said calmly. "And I just killed my wife." Detectives were struck by how composed he remained as he described what had happened the night before. He explained that on Christmas Eve, after drinking heavily, an argument between him and Stephanie escalated beyond control. Their relationship had already been falling apart, and alcohol pushed it over the edge. According to Dustin, he lost control in the heat of the moment. When he realized what he had done, he believed his life was effectively over. Fearing the consequences, he made a series of irreversible decisions. All of this happened while their 2 young daughters slept upstairs, unaware that their lives had been permanently changed. By morning, Dustin had removed almost all evidence of what had happened, all except his wife's body. He placed her remains into a gym bag and hid it inside a shed, hoping the winter cold would mask the smell. After that, he drove his children to his parents' house, claiming they would be spending Christmas there. To his parents, it felt like a pleasant surprise, and no one questioned it. Dustin then returned home and made the phone call that would set everything in motion. Overwhelmed by guilt, Dustin briefly considered ending his own life. The thought of facing public scrutiny and media attention felt unbearable. In the end, he chose to surrender and face judgment instead. That resolve, however, did not last long. In early 2015, while being held at Lancaster County Prison, Dustin took actions that left him critically injured. Despite intervention, he was later declared brain dead and passed away after life support was withdrawn. Crimes like this highlight the importance of restraint and de-escalation. In losing control of his temper, Dustin didn't just lose an argument. He set off a chain of events that destroyed an entire family. At a time meant for togetherness and forgiveness, he made choices that ensured exactly the opposite. I was driving from Cheyenne toward Montana, a route known for brutal winds and frequent road closures. I was about half a mile behind a pickup truck pulling a travel trailer when I noticed it beginning to sway. I knew that feeling well. I regularly hauled a trailer myself and had spent days in Wyoming waiting for the winds to calm. When people talk about wind there, they mean it seriously. Gusts can reach extreme speeds, and the region is infamous for it. As I watched, the trailer suddenly lost control and veered across the highway. The truck jackknifed and rolled. I reacted instantly, preparing myself to help. At the time, I was a new father, and moments like that make you think hard about life and how quickly it can change. When I reached the scene, it was immediately clear there was nothing that could be done. I contacted law enforcement, explained what I had seen, and followed their instructions. They told me I could leave. The rest of that drive was silent. I cried, thinking about my young son and how fragile everything really is. Seeing that accident forced me to reflect on my own life and the risks we sometimes underestimate. It was a reminder to count your blessings. I live in a very rural village, only a handful of houses, close to a highway and not far from a forest. On Christmas afternoon, my partner and I decided to go for a short walk to help digest all the food. It was already dark when we left, and we brought a powerful flashlight with us. I also carried my camera because I enjoy nighttime nature photography. We walked along a country road toward the forest, then turned onto a narrow gravel path that connects our village to the next. Part of the trail cuts directly through a dense patch of trees, making it especially dark. As we entered that section, my flashlight reflected off something unexpected. A car was parked off to the side of the path, partially hidden among the trees. That immediately felt strange. Cars aren't allowed there, and the path is narrow and secluded. My partner shined the light inside, and it appeared empty. The windows were frozen over, suggesting it had been there for quite some time. A short distance ahead, I noticed an unusual-looking tree and stopped to take a few photos. That's when my partner quietly said, "There's someone standing behind us on the road. He's just watching." No one had been following us before that moment. Indeed, there was a man standing behind us, just beyond the reach of the flashlight. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He simply stood there, facing us in the darkness. At first I assumed he might be startled. After all, it probably looked strange to see someone taking photos near his car. I stood up and spoke to him calmly, explaining that I was only photographing a tree nearby. He didn't respond. He just continued standing there. I then asked if he needed some light. He finally replied quietly that it wasn't necessary. The situation felt odd, but I stayed calm. I told myself there had to be a normal explanation. Still, my partner and I decided it was best to leave. We followed the path toward the next village instead of turning back. I memorized the letters on his license plate and later looked them up. The car was registered to a city nearly 6 hours away. This was unsettling, especially since the country was under a strict lockdown at the time. Travel without an urgent reason wasn't allowed. When we reached the first lantern in the next village, we looked back. The car slowly emerged from the forest, turned around, and then went back inside. I watched as it parked in the same spot and turned its lights off. He hadn't left. We took a much longer route home than planned. Our flashlight battery died along the way, my phone was running low, and I didn't feel safe stopping to call anyone. As soon as we got home, I contacted the police and gave them every detail I could remember. Looking back, I know how lucky I was. I wasn't alone. I had my partner, a camera, and a powerful light. I don't like to think about how differently that night could have ended if I'd been by myself. About 5 years ago, my mom started dating a man she met online. Online dating itself wasn't the issue. I'd met my wife the same way. But from the very beginning, both of us felt uneasy about this guy. He wasn't openly hostile. He was just unsettling, quiet, detached. He often kept his eyes closed and would say strange things that made people uncomfortable. Nothing overtly threatening, just behavior that crossed subtle boundaries and set off alarms you couldn't quite explain. One evening, my wife and I were at my mom's house when she got called into work. Her boyfriend was already there. Instead of spending time with us, he went into her bedroom, shut the door, and stayed there for hours. Occasionally, we heard movement, but mostly, it was silent. The entire situation felt deeply uncomfortable, and we didn't know how to handle it. Just before Christmas, my mom told us she was having problems with him. We listened and gently suggested that she might be better off ending the relationship. She had already decided. She planned to break up with him on Christmas Eve. What made me nervous was the timing. We were already staying at her house for the holiday. It felt like we were about to be caught in the aftermath of a situation we wanted no part of. That night, we stayed over and left early Christmas morning to visit my dad. We hadn't planned to stay there, but heavy snow trapped us in, which ended up being a relief. We avoided the breakup entirely and were glad to be somewhere else. The following day, once the roads cleared, we decided to stop by my mom's house to check on her. My wife had a bad feeling she couldn't shake. Given the circumstances, I understood why. When we arrived, my mom's car was in the driveway. She often walked to work, so that didn't tell us much. As usual, the front door was unlocked, and we stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet. Dim winter light filled the rooms. Then we noticed something was wrong in the kitchen. Water was pooling on the floor near the refrigerator, mixed with something that immediately made my heart race. My wife screamed. The house felt frozen in place. No voices, no movement, just a suffocating silence that told us something terrible might have happened. I hollered both of their names into the house, but there was no response. A sour pit churned in my stomach as my mind began to entertain the worst-case scenario. It's easy to imagine the unimaginable when the scene in front of you already looks wrong.